Evaluation question 2. How does your media product represent particular social groups? When creating my music magazine, I wanted to target 16 to 25-year-old male and females with disposable income, mainly targeting the mass subcultures Dick Hemdage 1975 of metalheads, emos, moshers and rockers. I knew that to make my magazine appealing, I needed to represent these subcultures. On my front cover, I mostly represented my subcultures through my main cover image, which is of my model, Josh. He does not actually have tattoos, so I bought some fake tattoo sleeves so I could use mise-en-scene to make him look as though he has real tattoos. I mediated the fake tattoo sleeves as they are something associated with the genre of metal and rock. The vast majority of metal and rock frontmen have tattoos, and it is also seen as something that's quite rebellious. I wanted him to have that typical frontman look. The fake tattoo sleeves helped me to accomplish this. Another aspect of my model Josh was his hair. Luckily for me, he already had messy hair which was fairly long, which is something stereotyped with the genre, as a lot of metal and rock band members have get out of bed hair. I also dressed him in a dark top. Dark clothing is also stereotyped with the genre. Also, it is a short sleeve top, so it showed off his tattoos. It links back to the genre as a lot of frontmen wear tops which reveal their tattoos. The main cover image is of Josh rather than the whole band, to signify that the focus is on Josh. Seeing as though it was only him on the cover, I wanted him to look as important as possible. I successfully gave him and the band importance by anchoring Roland Barthes 1979, a banner just below Josh. I referred to them as Britain's best band. Juxtaposing the image and the banner allowed me to give Josh importance, but also the band, but mostly him. I made him pose so he was directly engaging the audience by pointing his finger and looking directly at them. This pose in particular showed off his tattoos, allowing my social groups to see them. I used blemish spot remover to remove the majority of his spots so he could be seen as ideal self, Carl Rogers. Along with the dark clothing, messy hair and fake tattoos, my model Josh was able to represent my targeted social group, as he is a stereotypical metal and rock frontman you would expect to see on the cover of a magazine that targets metal and rock fans. Although he may be seen as an ideal self, he could also be seen as somebody who causes moral panic, Stanley Cohen 1972. By those who aren't familiar with the genre of metal and rock, his tattoos may intimidate people as they are often stereotyped with violence and danger. His tattoos could also create a negotiated reading, Stuart Hall 1980, as somebody who isn't familiar with the genre, for example older people, would see his tattoos as something that has ruined his body and they may think he looks a mess. However, the preferred reading would be that my target audience would see his tattoos as something which is cool and he represents the genre of metal and rock. I further represented the genre of metal and rock on my cover with the colours I used. The colours I used were red, yellow, black and white. They are often stereotyped with the genre of metal and rock as they are bold, masculine and aggressive. The fonts which I used also represented my subcultures in the sense that they were all bold, aggressive and similar to my colours. I wanted to use a lot of sharp fonts as they are used a lot in existing metal and rock magazines. The sharp effects connotes metal, as we often think of metal being sharp. My contents page also represents my social groups, as once again I have used the image of my model Josh. I have also used the same colours as on my cover, so in that respect those two elements which represent my social groups have been carried on from my front cover onto my contents page. To further show representation of my social groups, I have mentioned quite a lot about gigs and similar things to that. When creating my audience profile, I learnt that fans of metal and rock see music as a very influential part of their life, which is why they try to go to as many live shows as possible. To represent them in that respect, I made sure gigs were an important factor across my magazine, but predominantly on my contents page. On this contents page, I have used an image of a man playing a bass guitar. He could be seen as an ideal self, as the genre of metal and rock influences a lot of people to be musicians. The image shows him being a successful musician and playing an instrument. This represents my subculture in the sense of music being influential. The representation of my subcultures is further shown on my DPS for the third and final time. I used an image of Josh once again. He could be seen as an ideal self as he is directly engaging the audience with his arms folded, making him look serious. The fake tattoos are highly visible, even more so than my front cover. It also gives the audience a better chance to see his tattoos. Although he may seem attractive by some readers, the main part of him being an ideal self is not because he could be seen as attractive, but because he represents the subcultures of metal and rock music through the way he is dressed and his posture. I have also used the similar colours as on my previous 2 pages to create a house style. It further represents my audience in that aspect. On the DPS, it is not only Josh and the colours which represent my subcultures, but it is also the language which my article is wrote in. The article is an interview with Josh speaking about the band in relation to touring, changes in the band, and a new album coming out soon. I've used such language which only my target audience and age group would be interested in reading. It uses a lot of colloquial language and metal and rock terms, which only my social group would understand. For example, Josh says in the interview, "I'd been writing on the road. The road is another term for being on tour, not literally writing on the road. This is one of the many terms my audience would be familiar with." Another example of this language is when Josh uses the phrase clean vocals, which is what singing is known as in the metal industry, as it is a very common phrase which is thrown around and something only my social group would understand. The fact it is written in this language could make the magazine feel exclusive to my subcultures, almost like it was created especially for them. Josh speaks in a peer-to-peer mode of address in the article, therefore it allows him to speak directly to the fans of the band. It is almost like he's having a general conversation rather than being in an interview, which allowed my audience to feel close to him, like it is more personal.